Welcome to Listen Bitch Presents Tell Me Why You're Special. This is the arena where we don't just tell stories, we uncover the ones that almost never get told. Because the truth is, every generation has stories that change people, stories of courage, stories of sacrifice, stories of survival, stories that remind us what human beings are actually capable of when everything is on the line. But you guys, these stories don't survive on their own. Someone has to listen, someone has to care, someone has to be brave enough to tell them. And sometimes the most powerful story in the room isn't the storyteller's story at all. It's the story they were entrusted to carry. So today we're going to talk about survival and freedom and filmmaking, history, courage, and what happens when a remarkable human story finds the right messenger. Today's guest is Leif Bristow. He is an Emmy-winning producer, director, screenwriter, best-selling author, and a storyteller who has spent decades bringing powerful stories to audience around the world. Leif, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. It does sound like you're busy in the most fun way, so I love this. You've spent your life telling stories, but when you first learned the truth about Tia Zhang's life, what was the moment you realized that this is not just a story, and you realized that it is more of a responsibility?
It's interesting. Yeah, I started as a child performer. I performed a lot for a long time, and then when I came back into the industry, one of the things that I think is kind of a signature to my work, I had daughters, and so I felt there were not a lot of positive role models for young women in film and television. So both I I've always been, and my wife and I produce all the movies now together. We've always gravitated towards stories about women rising above adversities and finding their own place for their own reason within society, um, which I think is just really important.
Yes.
And then the other side of that is I always wanted to do content that would make us think, can make you laugh, make you cry. I mean, my wife and I produce an awful lot of Hallmark movies, but we also have done movies for HBO and around the world. And Tia's story was very unique. Our youngest daughter is an actress who does the people see her in a lot of Hallmark movies, and Lifetime and other things.
Oh, then I would
Um,
know her because I'm a Hallmark junkie, so I love that.
Okay. Well, if you ever saw a film like Safari Romance or Love, Romance and Chocolate, my daughter was the lead in Safari
Oh,
Romance.
that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, she's done about 20 herself.
Okay.
But she also was a prima ballerina and graduated from Canada's National Ballet School. And one time, just a couple of years before she graduated, my wife and I went to the school, just parent teacher update. And one of the teachers was telling us about Tia. And Brittany would come home from school and going, I've got this teacher. She is so tough. You go in, and instead of doing 20 plies, she'll have you do 100. Or instead of 20 jumps in second position, she'll have you do 50. And then if you complain about it, she'll have you do another 50. So she said, it's just mind-boggling. So but we were at the school, one of the teachers was telling us a bit about her story. And I looked at Aggie and I said, we have to make a movie about this. I mean, this is an amazing story of somebody rising above adversity and um, not not fully grasping what all that would entail and the the politics of doing something like that as well. So after when Brittany graduated, it was about the same time that Tia was retiring, and Tia agreed that she would come and talk to Aggie a little bit. She was very reluctant because, as she said, as a Chinese woman telling my story to somebody who's non-Chinese, just she never would have thought about it.
Of course.
But she would come and sit on our porch, and of course, then I think Brittany had PTSD because she came home one day and there's Tia sitting on our front porch having tea with Aggie, and she's going,
You guys are conversing with the enemy here.
Exactly. So anyway, Aggie and Tia became very, very close. Took a couple of years, and then Tia, as you would have found out from the end of the book, Tia is the woman that created what the world knows as Shen Yun. She created that dance extravaganza. She's considered the foremost expert on the planet in traditional Chinese dance. So we kind of followed all of that, and then It took a few years because she was traveling so much. And then eventually, Aggie was able to complete the book and publish it. And at the same time, our intent had always been to make a movie. But the story was so powerful that Aggie decided she would write the book. And to me, when I read the book, it's just so emotional and so gut-wrenching in so many ways to understand. And I equate the book as a romance novel,
Okay.
a historical romance novel, because it really demonstrates just that absolute power of love and conviction Tia had for her family, for when she fell in love with Jason, who her mother said she couldn't date because he was too tall and didn't have the right education. Um, she became completely estranged from her family until mother finally kind of negotiated a settlement to that, and then she was allowed to see Jason. Um, but being torn from her son, who was only 56 days old, and being sent to a labor camp because Madame Mao said she didn't think ballerinas knew what hard work was like.
Oh, wow.
Um, and her husband had been sent to a labor camp because he asked a question when he was in at university in the medical program. And then he was sent to a labor camp where most people never survived or made it back from. Um, and so it was just, the power of that story and that much love. And then because of friends of mine within the Chinese community, and I directed a TV series about Chinese stories. They asked me if I would make the movie, and I said I would, in part for them because of who Tia is. Many people in the Chinese, because people say, okay, you're a white guy, why are you making a movie about Chinese
Right.
culture?
Hmm.
And we had this conversation on the first day of rehearsal as well, with the whole cast. Um, and for many of the people that know Tia, their their relatives and their families would be threatened in China if they made the movie. So they were
Wow.
afraid to make the movie.
Yeah.
Three of my cast members in this movie were threatened and did not. We were shut down during COVID. We were started filming just before COVID hit, and then we were shut down when the world was locked down. And that usually is the death knell. You're never going to finish your movie. Well, we came back and we were the second film filming after the restrictions were lifted. And unfortunately, we couldn't go to Taiwan to finish the movie. We finished it all in Canada. But three of my principal cast members refused to come back to film because they had relatives that had been threatened in Beijing, Hong Kong, and other places. And uh, like one woman said, well, they called my grandmother in Beijing and said if I continued with the movie, she would be arrested.
Wow. Yeah.
So, we those aren't things we think of in our daily lives growing up in North America. Um, and so so on the first day of filming, I said a lot of the cast I already knew from just other things and other movies I'd done. So I said to her, I said, okay, look, this is a family story. We
Yeah.
all, we all, we all love, we all cry, we all feel pain. When we're cut, we all bleed.
Hmm.
This is a family story and a family journey. The nuance is I need you to make sure that it's authentic and correct in your voice and for the voice of the community. I can direct what you need to do as an actor. And we had just the greatest time. It was a very emotional experience for the whole cast because they said, never in our lifetime has somebody done an English language drama
Hmm.
about our stories. And these stories are, like the woman who plays Mother in the movie, who's phenomenal. She's South Korean. My lead male, Jonathan, is also South Korean.
Yeah.
And he said when he read the script, he started to cry. He's a young guy in his late 20s. He said he really started to cry because what it brought back for him were the stories of his grandmother
Hmm.
in the Korean War. She was the very last person put onto a ship in the harbor, and
Wow.
because the ship was so crammed, they literally jammed her on. She was the last person on the ship that got through the gate. They closed the gate. The ship pulled away, and then the soldiers opened up fire on all the rest of the people standing on the dock and just pushed them into the ocean.
Wow.
And so this is my young 30-year-old lead male
Yeah.
remembers this story from his grandmother. So I thought, just and some of the stories in the movie about um, when mother decided that she couldn't date Jason, and
Yeah.
she said, "No, I'm going to," and they became estranged. My entire cast sitting at the table, even in the rehearsal, couldn't stop crying to do
Oh,
the scene. And they all said, "We've all experienced this exact same dinner conversation in
wow.
our homes."
Wow.
My lead female actress had just gone through it 2 weeks before in her own family before coming to do the movie.
Wow.
So, I think I think what Aggie did magnificently was let the world see Tia's journey through Tia's eyes, which is so important to see it in that first person and to understand that world. Um, And so that's, one of the things that was so amazing for me about the book, and then to be able to translate it
Bring it to a
to the
movie.
feature. Um, but it's not just Tia's story. Yes, this is Tia's story,
Mm-hmm.
but 11% of North American population is of Asian ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
55 million people in North America are of Asian ancestry. And yet, how much do we know about our Chinese neighbor or
Yeah.
somebody that we went to college with who happened to be Chinese?
Yeah.
When did we ever stop to ask them their story? Like, what's their family like? So, and and traditionally a closed
Yeah. That's what I was gonna
society
say.
for
We,
information anyway.
it sounds
But if
like
we
they
don't,
protect those stories
yeah,
completely.
but
So
and if you don't ask, they're not going to tell.
yeah.
So I think, as we as we live in a society that requires that we be more accepting of our neighbor and understand each other. I hate the word tolerance. I've never liked the word tolerance. That's what you do with people you have to put up with but don't
Yeah.
want to. Um, Acceptance is what allows us to grow as a society
Yeah.
with people.
Yep.
And I think that's really important. Um, and there's people in the United States and Canada that, whether they came from Nigeria or Liberia or Hungary in the late, got out uh, in the 50s or just after that, or, my cinematographer for the movie, when he was 3 years old, he remembers the tanks coming through his town in Czechoslovakia.
Wow.
So, um, these stories are not unfamiliar no matter what culture you come from, because basically in North America, we're all basically we're all first, second, third, fourth generation
Mm-hmm.
of people who escaped some level of turmoil and ended up in North America for a better life. So the story is completely universal.
No, I love that. And I can see how, I mean, stories of survival just resonate, I think, deeply across any culture. Um, I love the contrast though. I mean, we're talking about you produce Hallmark movies, and those are my favorite because they're very predictable. They don't stress out my nervous system. I know exactly. I mean, my whole family makes fun of me because it is literally during Christmas time, right? It's just I love it.
It's a
Um,
comfort zone.
it's the comfort zone, and so you're used to creating that, and then you go and you take this story that, it's easy for me watching it to say like this is just a movie, but it is so much more than a movie, and that responsibility of you have so much more responsibility to translate the real story and the real voice, and I think, did you ever feel just weighed down by the pressure of that? Like, how can I really get into the depth of this? Like, I'm not saying directing movies is easy by any means, not even the predictable ones. Okay. I'm definitely not downplaying, but I just think
Hey, I'll
that's
tell you,
such a
directing a
different
Hallmark movie is in many ways more difficult. But no, I appreciate that question. There were you had with a story like Tia's. Now, unfortunately, it should have been a 4-part miniseries because there was too much information. Um, I think, as in many cases, in many ways, the book is more powerful than the movie, but the movie are the direct images that people can witness. The movie is not about, and this is where you have to be careful as a director. My job as a director was not to pass judgment on China and the Cultural Revolution. That
Right.
was simply the backdrop at that moment in history. So it is a fact in the movie, and this is the time period we play against. So for an audience watching, I'm able to introduce primarily English language audiences to something that's much more contemporary history of another culture that we're in. For Chinese culture, we're just used to sitcoms or seeing them playing the hop sing in the kitchen or the dry cleaner. It's not about taking their stories honestly and presenting them in a way that a modern audience can say, "Oh, wow, that was not that long ago." So this is a glimpse into Chinese history.
Yeah.
The, so you have to be careful as a director that I'm not making a political statement.
Right.
Um, it's the same as if I direct a biblical movie. My
Yeah.
purpose in doing a biblical movie is not to preach. It's to tell the story of the adversity of those characters at time in history and what they faced. If you're going to tell the story honestly, you you, you do in essence take a position because you have to support the integrity of the character you're playing or
Yeah.
portraying.
Yeah.
Tia and her family were persecuted,
Hmm.
sent to labor camps. I can't imagine having your child born, being the prima ballerina in the country, and then having the leader's wife say, "Well, I think ballerinas don't know what hard work is, so we're shutting all the ballet schools,
Yeah.
and now you'll all go to a labor camp." And she gets to see her son twice in 3 years. Like how horrific a moment like for any human being, but thinking of that young mother at 56 days, I mean, she's still grappling with the fact that she just given
She's a
birth.
mom. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, I think, listen, I live in the United States and I think we are a very spoiled people. We're fat, happy, comfortable. And I think we misunderstand so much about what really still is happening in other countries with what it really is to have life under oppression, for a lot of different cultures. I mean, you've got women who don't have the freedom. They can't have a conversation like you and I are having. They can't have a podcast. They can't watch the movies, let alone tell their stories, let alone talk about these things. What is the biggest thing you think that people misunderstand about a life under oppression?
I think this is that's such a wonderful question. I mean, I grew up in the States. I still have my draft card from Vietnam. So,
Yeah.
I figure I can say whatever I want about anything I want because I'm a citizen of North America.
Yep.
I'm a direct descendant of Abraham Lincoln. My grandmother was from St. Joseph, Missouri.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so, but I grew up like most people in North America. It wasn't until I was 21 that I left the continent. 90% of all North Americans will never leave North America in their lifetime.
No.
So our story and our news becomes a photograph of people, like just as an example, look at Lebanon and Palestine right now. I don't care what side of the equation
No.
anybody is on in this discussion.
Mm-mm.
When you see a bomb hitting and a child running away from rubble,
Mm.
what child on this planet in what's supposed to be a civilized world should have to endure that, irrespective of political idiocracy.
Hmm.
Um, it's just not right. But when we see it on the news, it's over there,
We're so
and
detached.
that is a lot of the problem, which is why years ago, whether it was for HBO, whether it's what I do for Hallmark, I always said, look, so many movies are made in North America every year. I need to let your audience live through where I can take them around the world to see people in real situations, even though they're not all about oppression or anything else. It's
Yeah.
like if you watch Love on Safari, well, I was able to do a movie about people falling in love while being on safari and having the wildlife and that experience and meeting the people. So we don't avoid the culture. We introduce the culture and the people. And I think until we take the time to understand it, and it's the fortunate thing that I've had in my career and in my life because I performed in Europe. I sang all over Europe, and I got to meet families. And what you discover when you travel, and frankly, go from, go from Michigan to Mississippi or go from Connecticut to New Mexico
Yeah.
and meet the people and see what makes them tick in their part of the country. And you quickly find out no matter where you go, people are the same.
Yeah.
We all want to go and we want to have outside lunch or a meal together
Yeah.
and laugh and tell stories and talk about our kids
Mm-hmm.
and talk about those things that we would love to do in life. And people that have kids, you never meet anybody that wants their child to die before they do, and everybody is struggling to try to make their that life better for their child. Well, when I'm in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm in Morocco, when I'm in Malta, when I'm in Ireland, when I'm in Mexico, everybody is the same. We all want to have a laugh and learn, try to say a few words in the local language and meet people. And you're embraced wherever you go. So to me, that's what we have to focus on because if we don't do that and we don't then say, wait a minute, how can we be one small voice against these levels of oppression and welcome people that are being oppressed in a different way? Um, then I think we're not really progressing as a society. I mean, I'm not saying every single person that shows up at the shoreline should automatically be admitted into any country. That's not the solution either. Um, but when we have the voice and the power to speak, we at least need to speak up and say, wait a minute, this is wrong, and stand up for what's wrong, no matter where it's occurring in the world.
Right. I agree with that. And I think I had a perspective before I started this show. And I think this is why God has moved me to expand into the show because He wanted the growth from me. I was I got radicalized in what I believed and what I thought, and I got very passionate about it. And um, I'm at the point now where I've deleted the social medias off of my phone. I stopped reading the news and I start having conversations with beautiful people like you. And I realize, like, you're exactly right. We all want the same thing. We want connection. We want to be seen, and we want love. And when you start to talk to people, I get to talk to people that we have completely different beliefs, completely different values, ethics, goals. We have the conversation, and it's just that reminder of like everybody's just a person. And if we can unplug from everything that, I mean, media wants us manipulated. They like the division. There's money in that. There's money in war.
Yeah.
There's money in hate. There's money in anger. There's money in sickness. There's a lot of things that are up against us. But I think like work that you do is incredible on so many levels because number one, I mean, you said earlier you take the responsibility of these stories and you have to separate yourself from like your core values and beliefs. You have to become unattached and be able to capture a story. On top of that, you're giving life to someone's trauma. Like you're handling trauma in these stories. I imagine even with Tia that it's a healing process, and you're also navigating as a director, like walking people through the courage it takes to actually revisit their pain publicly. Um, I just think this is incredible. It's an incredible gift, and I guess my question is, how do you handle all of that and not break under the pressure um, of just taking your personal everything out of it, um, not carrying the weight of people's trauma, and being able to walk people through the reliving of it.
You know, um, I think what is wonderful. I mean, and believe me, there were numerous times on set when we would be doing a scene where I would cry with everybody else because yeah, it's a responsibility, but I was enriched for understanding it. It gives me like you can't you have to make those decisions of saying, okay, I can't go down this path. And see, one of the things I don't do in any of my films is I've always said I will not do anything with gratuitous sex and violence. I want, even though Tia is a tougher story, it is not inappropriate for a 13 or 14-year-old to watch with their parents and learn about China.
Yeah.
Um, I, I, I've always been vehemently opposed to gratuitous sex on camera because 99.9% of the time it's exploitative of young women who are trying to build their career that can't say no or don't say no, and it's simply for the gratification of an uneducated filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I despise it. You know, Alfred Hitchcock was able to make an entire career through suggestion.
Yes.
And that's the power. It isn't the act. I mean, if I get horror movies and, I used to like them when I was a kid too, but I'm kind of over those. Um, I get it. But like with a movie like this, you have to take a position in that I have to say, okay, this is Tia's story. How do I present honestly and with integrity what that family endured
Yeah.
and honor it. I can still do that without going down the rabbit hole of the absolute and abject violence of
What
what was going on during the Cultural
happened?
Revolution.
Yeah.
I can depict a bit of it. Like in the movie, you you find out what happens on the day the Red Guard came in and stormed Tia's school.
Yeah.
It's a it's a it's a violent, sad scene, but definitely not gratuitous and not done in a
Yeah.
way that would keep it out of the eyes of, say, a 13 or 14-year-old because it's based in truth. I will not shy away from the truth. I'm getting ready. I have a cousin who warned the United States that Timothy McVeigh would blow up Oklahoma.
Wow.
The FBI, CIA, DEA were all on the phone with the Canadian Secret Service and my cousin saying there's no way a Canadian would know before we did.
Right.
That worked really well.
Wow.
So I'm about to make a movie about his life.
Yeah.
I'm the only person in the world he'll let tell it. And people don't understand that things like April 19th is kind of like a holy day in
Hmm.
that world. Ruby Ridge was April 19th. Waco, April 19th. Timothy McVeigh, April 19th.
Wow.
The US government strikes neo-Nazis on April 19th, and they strike back on April 19th. For the neo-Nazis and the skinheads and all that are part of that world, it's that's the anniversary of the roundup of the Polish Jews at the start of World War II.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a holy day, but when I see the level of hate crime that has occurred over the last, if we go back to say 2017 in particular, and I look at the volume of hate crime around North America and just kind of like the bile, um, it's just the dialogue has become so vile and so red line in the sand over everything
Hmm.
that it it's it's just exploded.
Hmm.
And I think it's time to tell that story as a reminder. Um, so to me, to do a movie that really focuses in on hatred at a time when hate crime is going through the roof,
Hmm.
if I can make a movie that creates that forces or creates dialogue, which is what I hope Tia's movie does for so many people.
Right.
It's a love story,
Yeah.
but and she finally managed to get her family out from under that. When she left, it's in the book, but when she left to go dance in England, when she was invited out, um, when they first allowed travel, Tia Tia believed from her upbringing that the rest of the world hated China because it was so great and that they hated the Chinese people. And so if you left, they would kill you. So now she arrives in London, England, petrified But she gets there and they drive her through Chinatown and she sees Chinese women in beautiful dresses just walking on the street. They're not wearing Mao uniforms
Yeah.
and they're having lunch and laughing and going to parties. And she goes to Royal Albert Hall and meets all these people and they're there just to watch and she said in beautiful dresses
Yeah.
and laughing and telling stories. And so when she returned home, she said the first thing she said to Jason when she got off the train was, it was all a lie. We've got to get out and we have to get our son out of here to give him a better life.
Yeah.
Tia, unfortunately, her parents lived to 103 and 104 or 102 and 103. She wasn't permitted back into China to go to their funerals
Oh,
um, because
the betrayal.
because of Shen Yun and because she
Yeah.
defected and um, and well, so I just felt this was her story. Her story, like when I think of a movie like Slumdog Millionaire that
Mm.
everybody could relate to, when I think of other movies, whether it's A Saving Private Ryan or Boy in the Striped Pajamas, these movies told correctly resonate because so many cultures, so many people have have relatives and people and know people in North America that all came from a place of
Yeah.
oppression and it's how we the stories that we gravitate to are based on the people that rise above the adversity
Yeah.
and how they rose above the adversity. So I've always felt, I felt Tia's story was just such a powerful, impactful story and it's truth. So it's not, my goal has always been that my resume at some point, when I'm not on this planet,
Yeah.
that no matter what's on my resume, anyone can watch.
Yeah.
And that's always been the goal. So, um, Tia is a slightly elevated, tougher one. I've done some suspense, but again, it's mind suspense.
Yeah.
Um, but it's mostly it's more about how do you find ways to make the world happy with our Christmas movies and our romance movies and things like that. But no, this was her story is too important to not have somebody be that
Yeah.
messenger, as you said. Because opening the door to Tia's story allows many, many more people from that culture to be able even to like some of my cast members didn't know that their own family had gone through the same things. It wasn't until they were doing the movie that their own family was even willing to talk about what
Thank
they
you.
endured.
Yeah. That's
So,
amazing.
it really it was healing. And the book, the for Shuang, it took 5 years after Jason and Tia left China to be able to get Shuang out. And by the time he came, the only parents he'd really ever known were his grandparents. So it was very tough. He felt abandoned. But this book, in particular, helped heal both of them.
I think that's amazing. What have you seen? Like all of these great stories, what are the great stories? What have you seen it reveal about human nature at its core?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The stories, what do they reveal to you about human nature?
Well, I clearly we have way more power within us than we realize. Um, not not everyone has the courage and the capacity to rise to those levels sometimes, whether it's because of upbringing, just personal traits, um, being being put in a position to believe that you can't. And that I think that is a that's a that's a huge stumbling block globally within society. That only a very small percentage of people ever had the courage to do what Tia did in leaving the way she did. Um, it doesn't mean that many, many people didn't talk about it, weren't afraid, but mostly they were afraid to talk about it. So they were never going to act on it. Um, and I think that whether it was Tia in China or, you know, I look at I look at the kind of the mental dilemma and even even kind of that abuse of being told you're not capable, you're not
Mm-hmm.
smart enough, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're never going to amount to anything. I think so many young people in our society today feel that that's the message being drummed into their head. And if you can, no matter how we do it, if we can find, I don't care if it's a Hallmark movie, if it's a Tia story, if it's another story that can show and demonstrate that level of empowerment and the ability to rise above those adversities and create courage. If you create courage for one person, you've accomplished an enormous thing. So I think that's, I would say that's one of the hardest things to watch in our society today is, so I just really feel that that's important. And I just,
Yeah.
as I said, having daughters, it was real important to me that they, like our oldest daughter is
Mm-hmm.
in Tucson. She is, by all accounts, she's certainly one of the top three scientists in her field in the world.
Wow.
Um, she's in the world of quantum processes,
Yeah.
and she oversees a major facility at the University of Arizona in Tucson. Um, they they spent a fortune to get her there, but she speaks all over the world in the world of quantum processes. Um, and she's ranked like in the top three scientists in the world,
That's amazing.
and she never, we wanted her to know whatever she chose, you have that support. And if you can dream it, you can accomplish it.
Yeah. I very much agree with that. I have one more question for you, Leaf, and then I want you to tell my audience where they can watch the movie, get the book, and get resourced. And actually, is there a place where we could sign up to come watch a Hallmark movie being produced? Because I'm fangirling out here. But
Sure, you just look me up on the internet and then say, "Can I come to your set?" And that's
yes,
that's pretty easy.
I would love it. I will bring you coffee, donuts, whatever it takes. I'll be there. Um,
Okay.
so this is the thing, and I guess this is kind of for myself with the show because the show is my passion project. It's a baby. Like I'm not even 3 months old here. But do you think that every person has a story powerful enough to inspire someone else? Or do you think most people never realize, even in ordinary life, they never realize the value of their own story?
Do you know something? I think that's so true. Um, every oh, I'm trying to think of his name. Oh my God. Uh, he's buried in Colorado. Um, one of the people had one of the big rodeos in the 1800s.
Yeah,
He made a wonderful comment. Every human being has a great story. Find their story.
yeah,
You know, so yeah, I think not every story is worthy of making a film, but every human being's journey to where they arrive and how they arrive at where they are in life is a testament to just living. We all aren't afforded the same luxury in life. Not everybody is born in Hollywood and has a chance to go and become a movie star. Not everybody can do, lots of people have dreams that aren't necessarily achievable in the time frame they want, and they modify their dreams. But all of our journeys are different. And within every family, when you have a family get together, within every family, there is always one family member who has the most incredible journey and stories that the family always loves to hear. And so I say, yeah, we can't write down every story, but every human being has a story worth telling. And that's why it's always good to open the door. That's why I say we got 11% of North American population is of Asian ancestry. How often do we as individuals simply walk over to our neighbor and say, you know what, I don't know you that well. I'd like to.
hmm
Tell me your story.
yeah. You spoke,
I think we'd all be
yeah.
enriched a lot
I
just by doing that.
I agree. And that's how I feel about the show. So you spoke straight to my audience because I am constantly just telling people, that I meet every day. I'm like, please, like, come tell me your story. I think whatever it is, it's important no matter what you're thinking about how you're holding it. And a lot of responses like, I don't really have anything great to say. I mean, if you're a mom, you've got stories. Like being a
Yeah.
mom is like a whole that's I've got a lifetime of stories, and I just think every human experience, what the show has taught me, and people like you have taught me, is that we are all connected, and the more we can share each other's stories, like, the brighter the room gets. And I think in my
Yeah.
beliefs we are called to be the light, and there's a lot of darkness. We can't get rid of the darkness, but we could bring on the light, and we can bring on the healing by letting people tell us their stories and by being open to their experience and free of judgment in just that space. And I think you're doing
Yeah.
that. Where can people find the story, the book, the movie?
Well, we have the website dancingthroughtheshadow.com. The book is on Amazon and it's been doing wonderfully well. I encourage everybody to read it because it's not a Chinese, I mean, obviously it's about Chinese culture. It's not specifically a Chinese story anymore than said, but it will open a window. It will open a door, and at the same time, the reader really gets the power of and the beauty and the emotion of the power of love and this family and rising above the adversities that they had no choice but to live under. For the movie, actually, I can't give you the exact date today, but yeah, the movie is represented by MGM Worldwide. They picked up the movie for worldwide distribution. Yesterday, I was talking to them, and they're onboarding the film now so that in September, in all English language territories of Amazon, the film will become available sometime in September. So I just don't have the exact date right now. But I know it'll be, like in their rental program, it'll be on Amazon Prime and different things like that. So, and we'll do a major publicity campaign around that,
Of course.
to let the world know that it's coming out. But yeah, I would encourage everybody to watch it. But the book is a really wonderful emotional journey, um, that I think no one. I mean, it's hard to put the book down, and
Mm-hmm.
you won't not cry when you read it.
Yeah.
It's impossible not to.
I've always been a book girly over a movie girly, so I'm excited to check it out. Leaf, this is the part of the show where I'm going to tell you what I think makes you special. I didn't say this to my audience. You have an Emmy, but I will say it's not the Emmy that makes you special. It's not the films. It's not even the success. What I think makes you special is that you have dedicated your life to preserving these stories that matter, that you have understood something that people completely miss. Stories aren't entertainment first. This is legacy. Yours and theirs. This is memory. These are lessons. They're warnings. They're hope. They're overcoming. They're the underdog wins. And with Dancing Through the Shadow, I feel like you helped ensure that one woman's extraordinary journey would not disappear into history. You have brought a lot of people together here. And I think that you're giving courage a microphone. And I think that you're putting a spotlight on resilience, and you're giving survival a voice. I think that's powerful. And beyond all of the accolades and the titles and all of the things, I think that is what really makes you special, sir. And to everyone listening, never underestimate the power of a story, because stories shape nations, and they shape families, and they shape identities. And sometimes the story that you're surviving right now becomes the story that saves someone else later. God gave every one of us a testimony, and it's not to hide it, not to waste it, but to use it. So I'm saying, please be courageous and remember that your mess is your message. Even the chapters you wish never happened, even the pain, even the struggle, those may become the very things that inspire someone else to keep going. Let's help our people keep going. If this episode speaks to you, do me a favor, share it out with someone who needs it. Let's get Leaf stories out. And if you guys are ready for the hot seat, I dare you to come tell me why you're special. Leaf, this is such a beautiful episode. You definitely spoke to my audience. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.